Welcome back to our conversation on government mobility, creating a lean, modern, and accessible federal government, sponsored by Microsoft on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. I'm Francis Rose. My guest today, Jason Kimry of Intel, Captain Dickey of the Coast Guard, Danette Campbell, the Patent and Trademark Office, Sean Seiler of Microsoft, and Joe Klimovich of NOAA. I want to talk about flexibility in this part of our conversation. And Joe, before I came in here, I happened to pull out my mobile device, went on the NOAA website to look up a last-minute piece of information, noticed that you are in the process of rolling out a mobile website. You're thinking mobile first. That is something that we were not thinking about in the federal government even 2 years ago, let alone 5 years ago. Tell me about how that mindset is influencing the way you're looking at mobile, not just for your end users inside the agency, but outside the agency, your customers, the people across the country that come to the website or approach NOAA in any of the other ways that they can to get information from you.
Absolutely. As you've heard on the different reports, more and more people are accessing data and information via mobile devices. And we think it is the future. It is the way people are going to access it. And so it's not all of our websites are mobile yet or support the mobility, and we're trying to move to that solution as fast as possible. But I think one of the questions about the flexibility is not only do we need mobile websites and make sure all our information is tailored and geared toward the mobile users, both internal and external, is we really need to figure out what devices we're going to support, what apps we're going to support, and we need to move to a fairly robust way of supporting a variety of devices. And so one of the things that we're doing next month is rolling out a more robust cloud-based mobile device management solution that we can then start bringing in a whole, basically allowing more flexibility in terms of the devices. But beyond that is allowing people to tailor the devices to meet their needs. And ultimately, if people want to, is different devices that they're maybe using other personal settings, or if they're coming in from other agencies. We have a lot of visiting scientists from other agencies. Maybe they have their own suite of technology solutions, and we want to be able to manage that and make sure they can use it productively. But the more capability we can put in there from an enterprise perspective, the better we can support our end users, whether they be NOAA employees or internal or the external public. So we've got a variety of things we're looking at. We're not there yet, but we're happy about the future.
Well, and you talked in the last part of our conversation about the constant surveying that you're doing, the open lines of communication that you have with your employees. Does that give you, in your view, enough of a lead time to be able to develop technologies or merge technologies or change the ones that you have on hand to be able to meet the needs of your people?
Well, I think so. I've been doing it for 7 years, and we take feedback in a variety of ways on a regular basis. But something interesting is that I thought more and more people would like bring your own device to work. Here's something you use in the home on your own time, and really gearing up toward bring your own device to work. And when we asked that question, and we said, okay, but NOAA's going to manage that device because of security and other things, and I would think you'd actually would embrace that because in terms of help, but we had clear majority said they were not interested in bringing their own device to work if it meant that NOAA was going to manage it from an enterprise perspective. And so again, it comes back to the education, making sure that people are aware of the trade-offs. There are advantages of using your own device you're comfortable with, but when you look at all the things that you have to do to be compliant around that, it might not make sense. So we're constantly surveying our employees to understand what they want and make sure they have the best possible solutions.
Sean, that's an interesting remark that Joe makes about bring your own device, because early on it sounded like BOD was at least expected to be a real watershed for federal agencies. Wow, we're going to save a lot of money because people are going to go out and bring their own. We won't have to buy them BlackBerries or whatever. Mm-hmm. It hasn't really turned out that way, has it?
It really hasn't. A lot of a lot of agencies have had enthusiast employees bring in their devices, and I think that's sort of what sparked all this and got them thinking about it. But once the agencies really thought about it for a while and tried to figure out, as Joe was mentioning, how to secure the data, how to make sure that your compliance requirements are met, suddenly it became much more difficult, and trying to do that entire BYOD in a secure fashion, it's hard. It's not something that you can just get done over the weekend, and I think that's something that we're in the process right now of, is figuring out on the large scale how you can balance the requirements for security and manageability with this great open, easy infrastructure that the users are thinking about with BYOD.
How flexible, Danette, is your infrastructure to be able to allow people to use things that they want to use of their own, both today and in the future, for maybe technologies in 5 years that we don't even think of today?
Right. Piggybacking on what my colleagues have said, it's very difficult to manage individual devices. And we do have a program that's still in effect where people utilize their own computers to access data, information, so that they can work from home. But as everyone here knows, there are a series of checks that those appliances, if you will, have to go through before an individual can do this, including several layers of security checks. Now, we have kept that initiative, quite frankly, to a minimum because of all of the effort that it takes to manage and the resources associated with that. What we're using for people to work remotely, as I had mentioned early on, is really a replication of what they have when they're in the office. People are very comfortable with that. That, again, is evolving as the technology evolves. What does the future hold? Quite frankly, I don't know. We continue to grow things like certainly the size of the monitors get larger and larger and larger, which really enhances the ability of our patent examiners and trademark examining attorneys to get their work done. But other than that, I really don't know where we're going with this. I mean, we are moving to utilizing the cloud more and more. I know that our OCIO has discussed a bring your own device kind of initiative, but I can't speak to exactly where that is right now. It's going to be interesting to see, quite frankly.
Jason Kimmery of Intel, not just in the BYOD realm, but on the broader issue of flexibility and what to anticipate. Short of giving us your product release list for the next 2 years, because you're an innovative company, how do you counsel somebody in the federal government to try to think ahead and anticipate what the possibilities are for their mobile network in the foreseeable future?
The one thing that's clear is that you're going to see, what are we at, 5 billion internet-connected devices today to go to 15 billion in the next 5 years. You can expect a massive increase in the amount of mobile touch points onto your environment. And from a device standpoint at Intel, the devices we're designing today and the products we're designing today probably aren't going to ship for another couple of years. So we're always trying to think, 2 to 3, even 5 years out in terms of what these devices can look like. And I would just say you can expect, more IP connected devices, more variation in what those devices look like. Everything from glasses to phones to everything that can connect to the power, can connect to power, will also can have an IP connection. So you can really just imagine the massive amounts of innovation that you're going to see. But I think the one thing that's not going to go away are the security requirements. And from an IT standpoint, you're really just going to have to be able to tier and classify what devices you want to allow to your network. If IT can control and manage it, you should be able to feel comfortable that that person can have full access to the capabilities. If they want it to be a pure BYOD, you really have to limit the types of resources and capabilities you want to give them.
So, folks, as Jason talks about some of those things, and he mentioned CES not too long ago, and some of the devices, the emphasis there seemed to be on wearables. And it makes me think of the Internet of Everything as he talks about just all of these various things that can be connected to the Internet. Joe, I wonder if the federal government as a whole, not specifically NOAA, but just based on your conversations with your colleagues across government, are we as a whole prepared for that kind of connectivity within the agencies, not even necessarily from a productivity point of view, but from an anticipatory point of view where we're thinking about the citizens that we're serving on an agency-by-agency basis?
I think one thing I look at, and the day of wearable technology is not that far off. I mean, I get to play one of the Google glasses a little while ago, and as we have more and more staff out in the field. That's not bad because it keeps their hands free. And I think you're going to see more and more of that stuff. I think one of the areas that we, not only the federal government, but also in the private sector, have one of the biggest challenges we have is bandwidth. Wireless spectrum is a hot commodity right now. And as we move more and more information to these mobile devices, and they're growing exponentially, and you have applications. I mean, we're millions and millions of apps out there. They're consuming information. They're consuming bandwidth. And one of the things that NIST and Department of Commerce is looking at is how to use wireless spectrum more efficiently. So not only is the federal government looking to free up spectrum for the commercial sector, but then what are the technologies that need to be in place to use the given spectrum as efficiently as possible? That's one of the things I think that's going to be a challenge going forward. Captain
Michael Dickey, the Coast Guard, bandwidth is no doubt a tricky proposition for you when you have folks all over the globe, literally, particularly in the oceans on either side of the United States, but all over the globe in places where bandwidth was not really a consideration for a long period of time.
That is a problem for us in many cases. Obviously, on our ships, where we are constrained by physics and dollars in extending our network to our ships. But even from the ships to the small boats that they deploy, and in many cases now it's become very common. We're deploying a small boat over the horizon for 12 hours. And we're looking at solutions to extend what small bandwidth we do have on board that ship to that over the horizon boat. So that's one of the areas that we are focusing on. Extending not the smartphones and tablet type mobile devices that we've been talking about, but still extending our network and extending access to critical operational data to the crews of those boats. But even in the continental U.S., we have bandwidth struggles. We have Coast Guard stations in some really beautiful vacation spots all along the coastline, including the shores of the Great Lakes and the coast of northern Washington or northern California. There are some bandwidth challenged spots out there, even from a terrestrial network point of view. So we do struggle with that.
Sean Seiler of Microsoft, you were nodding your head in violent agreement with Joe as he was talking about bandwidth. We operate in a metropolitan area like Washington, D.C. under the assumption that we can get as much bandwidth as we want any time. That's not how it works. All the places where all of these agencies and all the federal agencies are deployed. Tell me about the concept of bandwidth and whether it's something like maybe an energy source that you and your colleagues can develop more bandwidth efficient ways of computing, or is that not how it works technologically?
It's definitely something that can be managed better, and there are technological changes that can be made and are being made to help utilize the bandwidth more efficiently. But I would equate it a little bit more to roads, its infrastructure. Can you upgrade those? Absolutely, but it takes a lot of work and a lot of money. And while we've primarily been talking about wireless here, within the federal government, there are many locations that even on a fully wired network have inadequate bandwidth for what they're doing today, much less in 5 to 10 years. So I think it's something that certainly constrains and challenges a lot of our mobility solutions. When you look at using a link for communications on a tablet device, it's a terrific solution as long as you've got the bandwidth to make sure you can always stay connected. So there are challenges there that can be solved, but like everything, you have to throw money at a lot of these things to make them efficiently work in the long run.
And Captain, we go back to what you talked about earlier about the whole concept of competing for resources. Everybody, you're not peculiar in this, everybody has a limited amount of dollars, and if you don't do this, in order to do that, you didn't do this over here. Is that the dynamic that you're thinking about as you're talking about bandwidth in addition to all these other things?
That absolutely is a discussion that we have. When an operational commander says, I need more bandwidth for this particular class of ship, or a program manager needs more bandwidth for their particular program, we always have to have a trade-off discussion. Okay, you want more bandwidth? We can do that. What are we going to cut? What are we going to stop doing? And that is always the question.
Mm-hmm. Danette, the future of telework at your agency is obviously very bright. It's popular. It's borne out, as you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, in how highly PTO ranks in the best places to work survey. What's the future that you see progressively as far as what end users are saying they want to be able to do that they can't do now? When you ask them, as you talked about surveys, how can we do this better? What do they tell you?
Oddly enough, people are very, very satisfied with the way our telework programs are going right now. Now, does that mean that we cannot improve? Of course not. We will continue to survey our employees, conduct pilot programs, and make the determination as to how we can make them better. We're talking about bandwidth a little bit early on, and one of the things that we do require for our teleworkers is they must have high-speed internet wherever they decide to relocate, if they're going to be a full-time teleworking employee. And many areas in the country still do not have that high-speed availability. So I'm hoping that we see a change across the country, certainly in that capacity. We currently have about a little bit more than 11,500 employees. This was at the end of the fourth quarter, FY13. A little bit under 12,000, between 11,500 and 12,000 employees. Of that, we had nearly 9,000 people working from home anywhere between 1 and 5 days a week. Half of those are working from home full time. So it's an initiative that's not going to go away. It's just going to continue to grow. It is a way that helps our agency accomplish its mission and certainly achieve its strategic goals. And certainly it's a great recruitment and retention tool for us.
Joe Klimovich of NOAA, you get the last word. We just have a couple of moments left. You mentioned a cloud project that you're undertaking at NOAA. Observers like me who are watching you from the sidelines tend to put cloud and mobility in separate buckets. Are we doing it wrong? Should we be thinking about them as kind of one entity combined?
Well, I think NOAA is one of the agencies out there is embracing cloud solutions more so than anyone else out there. And part of it is no matter what solution I deploy, it's a cloud solution for somebody. If I deploy it inside of my footprint, it's still a cloud solution. And I think there now are getting to the point there are so many cloud solutions available out there that you can deploy in 6 months after you sign the contract. You can roll it out across an agency. So I think, and we've also, as we have other cloud solutions we want to tie into, we want to integrate with, you've got to look at what solutions are out there. And so we found it's just easier just looking into the cloud first for our solutions. And that's really where we're going. I think in the future, again, I've said many times, it's through the web. We want to make sure all the information, all the services are available, and you can use any device for that. But I think in the future, there's going to be more and more of a push for internal application developments, making sure that things are available in an app versus going to a web for the services. We don't compete with the private sector for web or app development. There are millions of apps out there right now that access environmental information and environmental services. We want to spur economic growth in the private sector in this area, but within NOAA, I think that there's going to be a lot of emphasis on developing internal apps for internal productivity gains on any device.
I want to thank all of you for being here today. We're out of time, but thank you for a terrific conversation. Joe Klimovich of NOAA, Sean Seiler of Microsoft, Danette Campbell of the Patent and Trademark Office, Captain Michael Dickey of the Coast Guard, and Jason Kimmery of Intel. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for listening to our panel discussion. I'm Francis Rose.